Hi there, we're in the Cloud and CyberSecurity Expo at the Marina Bay Sands Convention Center in Singapore, and with me is Mr. Eric Hui, Director of IoT Systems, Equinix Asia Pacific. Thank you very much for joining us.
Very glad to be here.
All right, I'll go straight into the questions. Now, we have a lot of talk on open data, right? So maybe you can start by telling me why open data matters.
Open data actually is something that I find a lot of value that the governments are releasing publicly accessible information out to the population. Mm-hmm. The reason of doing that is enable a lot of the developers, a lot of the infrastructure providers to be able to map their own data with open data to actually create intelligence. Mm-hmm. So having intelligence helps citizens on their daily lives, and a lot of the planning work that the government wants to do actually relies on a lot of the open data and collaboration with the general public in order to find new value. So I think that is very important.
All right. Now, having said that, how do you define open data? I mean, you have IoT devices generating a lot more data nowadays. So how does the government classify which data can remain as open data and without invading privacies and stuff like that?
I think in general, let's say, for example, general air quality information, like for example, a bit of traffic pattern flow information, that's actually considered as okay because it's publicly available data. Mm-hmm. But however, if it actually links to an identity, that's not considered as open because it actually invades into certain privacy laws. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you think about cars coming in, if there's a camera counting number of cars, I think that's okay. That's going to open data. Right. But if you're actually taking the license plate of the vehicle, that's considered an issue. So that's how we see information being processed. As far as patterns is concerned, that's okay.
So how is the reception to this kind of patterns? Are industries and governments okay with classifying it, or are they looking to take all the data at the same time?
I think probably they're doing some work as far as classifying data. Mm-hmm. For example, there's a lot of information right now, going in through the government servers and going through into some of these edge devices. And Equinix is also actually working very actively in a lot of places to work with governments, work with enterprises on the edge development. For example, cars coming in, using that same example again, cars going in as a pattern, but the license plate is actually being faded. You cannot see the license plate. So at the end, so that's something also we see as one of the things helping you to open data.
Right. My next question to you is now, how does open data unlock valuable insights while staying secure?
I think that the pattern itself, for example, those one of the car that using back that car, I mentioned that again. That itself is going to create a lot of information to be available for other private enterprises or even service providers to interpolate together to create intelligence. So again, we talked about the edge thing that is relevant to doing this.
That's right.
What Equinix is basically help is to basically enable all these IoT platforms to be interpolating multiple sets of data into the locations and then find intelligence. So I think intelligence will be increasingly accessible via edge locations as well.
That's very interesting, actually. Now, I've got two more questions, actually. One is IoT devices. Now, they're generating a lot of data. So with this happening, will traditional data centers remain relevant still?
I think that in general, the data centers itself for on-premise private enterprises, that will increasingly shrink in a bit. But the thing is, in relative sense as well, the access to cloud is important. So hence the reason of hybrid kind of infrastructures will be remaining as mainstream going forward. So you have your legacy things on-premise or on a co-located facility like Equinix and interconnected to cloud and kind of cloud resources in the future. So I see that as basically the trend on how the whole data center landscape will change and the whole IT consumption model will change and relying a lot more in interconnection.
Speaking of that, my last question is, when it comes to artificial intelligence as well, how does Equinix leverage on AI for this?
Okay, so we're seeing a lot more of what we call distribution of infrastructure and IT resources. And the cloud providers also increasingly distributing over an edge. So with Equinix, because of our locations, because of the capability that we can interconnect with a lot of different providers, that kind of AI service capability will also want to be present in the Equinix data centers through a lot of our service provider customers. And if, for example, the data coming in from a sensor can be captured at the edge and analyzed, learned at the edge via AI capability, then the pathway going back to the access and make a decision becomes much faster. So that's going to be the trend we see increasingly in the future.
All right, that's fantastic. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we end this?
I think, one of the things we see, especially when we talked about intelligence and all of that, data, yes, the data gravity increasingly becomes more and more heavy. But the thing is, data heavy, we haven't really harnessed the value of analyzing it,
that's right,
creating business value out of that data, and generate intelligence. Right now it's called intelligence of things, but I think it's going to be the Internet of Intelligence in the future as well. And we in Equinix see that interconnection is going to be a very important pillar of Internet of Intelligence.
That's going to be very interesting indeed. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Eric, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Cheers. Thank you.